Okay, welcome to the third part of our noun review from Latin 1. I hope that the semester started well for you. If you happen to hear a baby crying in the background, that is my son Jacob, and he's okay. He just kind of gets fussy at nighttime. So anyway, at the end of the second video, we learned about the nominative and accusative cases in Latin. And if you guys remember, we looked at some sentences here about how nouns can be used, and we talked about the fact that case is the way a noun is spelled depending on how it is used in a sentence, and the spelling when it's the subject we call that nominative, and the spelling when it's the direct object we call that accusative. And then, if I remember, we also learned about declensions. So how nouns belong to families where they have the same endings for the cases. And Latin has 5, and we're going to focus on the first 3 really until the end of this semester. Okay, so at the very end, you learn the songs, and that's how I want to warm up right now. It's just to sing the songs really quickly. I hope that you guys have been practicing. So nominative, here it is. 3, 2, 1. You are my subject, my only subject. You're nominative, you run the verb. You may be a, us, or something random. Plural a, e, I, or es. And again, that's a is first declension, us second. Something random would be third declension. Those are all singular. And the plural forms a, e, first declension, I, second, and es would be third. And then we had the accusative case, and that goes, the accusative case goes em, em. The accusative case goes em. It's the direct object. The accusative plural goes os, es. The accusative plural goes os, es. It's the direct object. And all the sentences that we looked at dealt with nominative and accusative singular. But because the songs have the plural forms, what I wanted to do before we move on to a third case that we'll learn today, what I wanted to do is take a look at a couple of sentences that use nominative plural forms and accusative plural forms, just so you can kind of get used to seeing them. So check out these sentences from stage 5. And of course, we always want to pronounce Latin before we kind of dive in and try and figure out its meaning. So the first picture is canis est in via. And the second picture is different because you see several canes sunt in via. So you can see immediately you've canis versus canes. So singular canis versus plural canes. The dog is in the street. The dogs are in the street. That would be, let me think about that. You may be a, us, or something random. Plural a, e, I, or es. So canes is a third declension noun. Check out this one. Servus est in via. Servi sunt in via. These pictures are so depressing. So a slave is in the street versus servi. The slaves are in the street. So that would be a second declension noun, right? You may be a, us, or something random. Plural a, e, I, or es. Puella est in via. Puellae sunt in via. So the girl is in the street versus the girls are in the street. So this is an example of a you may be a, us, or something random. Plural a, e, I, or es. So that's a first declension noun there. And then, wow, wait, did you guys see that? Look at this picture right here. Look at this dude with his arms outstretched. He is happy. And look at this posturing right here by this boy in the street. Man, interesting stuff. We'll have to talk about this. And then you got a bunch of merchants here. So mercator est in via versus mercatores sunt in via. The merchant is in the street versus the merchants, plural. And so you kind of get the picture, I think. Obviously, the first word in the sentence is usually the subject. So spectator versus spectatores. The spectator versus the spectators. Actor versus actores. Femina versus feminae. Senex versus senes. Okay, now moving on, I wanted to give you a couple of sentences that use some accusative plurals. So, nuntii spectaculum nuntiabant. That means this is a little bit repetitive. The messengers were announcing the show. And then Pompeiani nuntios audiebant. Wow, there we go. What word do you think is the subject of this second sentence? If you said Pompeiani, you are correct. That's nominative plural. And then you've got a verb, audiebant, and so then the only word that's left is nuntios. The accusative case goes em. So it's not singular, but the accusative plural goes as, os, es. Hey, it's the direct object. The Pompeians were listening to the messengers. Moving on, we'll do a few more. Gladiatores perviam procedebant. Pompeiani gladiatores laudabant. I really like this because you see that the word gladiatores is used in both sentences, right? There's no spelling change whatsoever. But the way that they're being used, in other words, their case is different from the first sentence to the second. In the first, gladiatores perviam procedebant, the gladiators were proceeding through the street. You've got subject, prepositional phrase here, and then, of course, your verb. The second sentence, Pompeiani gladiatores laudabant, you've got Pompeiani, who would be the subject there. Laudabant is your verb. Gladiatores is actually accusative plural. So I don't know if you guys noticed this. I'm going to flip over to the noun chart here for a second. The single most important piece of paper that I will ever give you, verb and noun chart. Look in the third declension column for a second. Do you see here in the plurals that es is the nominative plural and also the accusative plural ending? And so how do you tell if it's nominative or accusative? Well, it's based in context and also based on position within the sentence. In the second sentence, gladiatores is in the middle, so chances are it's not the subject, which it's not. It's the direct object. And in the first sentence, it's the first word, so chances are it is the subject. Okay. Let's see. Puellae, euenes, salutaverunt. Here we have another example. Euenes quoque ad amphitheatrum contendebat, where you've got euenes used in both sentences, but in different ways. In the first one, puellae, that they would be the subject. The girls, it's the first word, the girls praised the young men. So they are accusative direct object. They are receiving the praise. Okay. In the second sentence, though, the young men would be the subject. They are also hurrying to the amphitheater. And so on and so forth. You can see, here's another one. Pueri perviam festinabant, puellae pueros salutaverunt. So the boys were hurrying through the street. The girls greeted the boys. Pueros there. Second declension, accusative, plural. And so just moving on, I think that you guys get the gist here. Here's another one, just like earlier, where gladiatores is used twice, but again in different ways. You can tell in the first part of the sentence, it's sort of in the middle there, so it's going to be the direct object. The Pompeians were intently watching the gladiators. And the second part of the sentence, because gladiatores in area pugnabat, the gladiators are the subject there, because the gladiators were fighting in the arena. Okay, so there you have it. Now, moving on. Let's take a look at some slightly more complicated sentences, and these pictures are everybody's favorite in the Red Book, because they got naked people in them. And just, yeah, okay. So we're going to look at the sentences first, then look at the official grammar notes, learn a new song, and we'll fill in our noun chart. So here we go. Quintus ad termas venit. Well, what does that mean? It means Quintus came to the baths, and oh my gosh, look at this. Look at the background here. Ooh, scandalous. Quintus servo pecuniam datit. Okay, now here we have Quintus, we know what to do with. That's going to be our subject, right? Look at the noun chart. Where do you see US? Bam, nominative case, and nominative is used as the subject of the sentence. And then we've got serwo. Now we know that that comes from servus, meaning slave, but you've never seen this O ending, so you probably don't know what to do with this. So we're just going to not worry about how that word fits into the context of the sentence yet. Let's figure out what we do know. Pecuniam ends in an AM. The accusative case goes em. It's the direct object. So we know our subject. Oops, let me simplify this a little bit. We know that our subject is quintus, our direct object is pecuniam, and the last word of the sentence is almost always the verb. It's dated here, which means gave. So Quintus gave money. That is the gist of the sentence. Now, what's this word servo doing? Well, what does it look like in the picture? Here's Quintus holding a coin. Here's the slave. Could we translate the sentence as Quintus gave the slave money? The answer is yes. Could we also translate that as Quintus gave money to the slave? The answer is also yes. Whoa. Okay. Oh, and you've got some naked wrestling over there. Hey, what's going on here? Well, the friends greeted Quintus happily because he was celebrating his birthday. And check out this one. Quintus discum novum ferebat. Quintus amicis discum ostendit. First sentence. We've got Quintus. We know he's nominative. Discum, the accusative case goes em. It's a direct object. Novum is an adjective describing discum. And ferebat is our verb. Quintus was carrying a new discus, or frisbee, right? Now, Quintus, we've got that. Amicis. Have we ever seen this is ending on a noun? Look at our noun chart. I don't see an is ending anywhere, so that's kind of a question mark. Discum, we know, is the direct object. Ostended is a verb, meaning to show. Quintus shows the discus. Now what? How about this? Quintus shows his friends the discus. Or you could say Quintus shows the discus to his friends. Oh, hold that in your heads as we move on. Then, of course, he hurls the discus at a statue, which is beyond me, and it cuts off the nose, right? Okay. So, using those sentences as an example, we're going to get into a new case. And let's take a look at how nouns are used in English. Let's go back to that for a second. And we talked about subjects and direct objects, right? Stephen hits the ball. Also, objects of a preposition, like to the store. Store would be the object of the preposition. Now, here's the one we're going to focus on today, right? The indirect object. So Mr. Allen gave Solomon a book. In this sentence, we already identified that Mr. Allen is the subject. The book is the direct object because it is the object that was given. The indirect object is the person, usually a person, who receives the direct object. Here's a way to think about it. Can you remove the word from the sentence and have it still make sense? If so, it's an indirect object. Can you remove the direct object from the sentence and still have it make sense? The answer is no. So if I said Mr. Allen gave a book, that technically makes sense. It's awkward, but it makes sense. If I said Mr. Allen gave Solomon, that's not a complete thought, right? So you cannot remove the direct object and still have it make sense, but you can take the indirect object out of a sentence and it would still make sense. I mean, after all, if we look back here, would it make sense to say Quintus showed the disc? Yes. A little weird, but there it is. Or Quintus gave money? Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, so here we go. The official Graham notes, they're pretty short. We just kind of talked about all that. And let's take a look at this picture. It didn't come out very well, sorry. Some of you who keep up with politics might know that the guy on the right is John Boehner. He's the Speaker of the House. And the woman on the left is Nancy Pelosi. She's the House Minority Leader. And they are somebody's giving a gavel to somebody else, right? So what's going on here is that Nancy Pelosi, who was the former Speaker of the House, she is giving the gavel to John Boehner. Now, in that sentence, Nancy Pelosi gave John Boehner the gavel. What is the direct object? Is it John Boehner or is it the gavel? Nancy Pelosi gave John Boehner the gavel. The answer is the direct object is the gavel. It's the thing itself. And then John Boehner would be the indirect object. He's receiving the direct object. You could take his name out of the sentence and it would still make sense. Technically, Nancy Pelosi gave the gavel. But you couldn't say Nancy Pelosi gave John Boehner, because then you're like, well, what exactly did she give him? I need more information. So, indirect objects. When we're looking at indirect objects in Latin, the way that they are spelled to indicate that they are an indirect object, for shorthand, we say that they are in the dative case. The word dative coming from the Latin verb dat, datit, which means to give, right? It's translated usually as to noun or for noun. For example, Nancy Pelosi gave the gavel to John Boehner, or I bought a ring for my wife. But you can also rephrase this to say Nancy Pelosi gave John Boehner the gavel, and I bought my wife a ring, and those sentences still make complete and total sense. Okay? Moving on. So what do the dative endings look like? Well, here they are. First declension, AE, which you're thinking, oh man, don't we already have that somewhere? And the answer is yes. You already see AE right here in the nominative plural. So if I see a word that ends in AE, how am I going to know if it's nominative plural or dative singular? The answer is context. Okay. And then you've got the letter O. We've never seen that before. And then I for third declension. Now look at the noun chart. Do you see the letter I somewhere else? You sure do. Nominative plural. But here's why knowing the declension matters. Because if you saw a noun and it ended in I and you didn't know the declension, in other words, you didn't know the noun family, you might assume that it's nominative plural, second declension, when really it might be dative singular, third declension, or vice versa. So knowing the declension of a noun is very important. And then the plural forms, we have is, and ibus, and we've never seen those on our noun chart as of yet. So, let's move on there. Let's take a look at a couple of example sentences, and then we'll learn the song and fill in the chart, and we'll call it a day. So, anche la domino cibum ostendet. Well, you can also tell, by the way, how Latin is usually going to do this. We start off with our subject. We know that cibum is our direct object. Sorry for the terrible drawing here. I'm being lazy. And ostendet is the verb. So domino, if we look back at our chart, we see that letter O, second declension, dative singular. That's going to be the indirect object. So I'm just going to put I-O. This sentence pattern is key to understanding Latin. Subject, indirect object, direct object, verb. That's like the critical backbone of all sentences in Latin, period. You'll see it over and over again. So the slave girl showed the master the food, or the slave girl showed food to the master. Look at the next one. Agricola uxori annulum emet. Once again, subject, indirect object, direct object, verb. The farmer bought his wife a ring. Or you could say the farmer bought a ring for his wife. Uxor, third declension noun. How do I know that that's not a second declension nominative plural? Well, I already have a subject, Agricola, and Agricola is singular. How about this next one? Servus metellae togam tradidit. The slave handed over a toga to Metella. Okay, next one. Femina angelis tunicas quaerebat. The woman was looking for tunics for the slave girls. And then finally, mercator gladiatoribus pecuniam offerebat. The merchant was offering money to the gladiators. Okay, so these are some examples of indirect objects dative case, right? So those are all the datives right there. Huh. Kind of looks like a person in some way. There's the nose, there's the mouth, there's the chest. I'm so tired. Just ignore everything I just said. Okay, now here's a song for us to know the dative endings. And once again, I cannot take credit for this song. I think Scott Stevens, the teacher in Cobb County, wrote it, though I'm not 100% sure, because I've heard this song for many, many years. It goes to the tune of Zippity-Doo-Dah, which some of you might know from childhood, and that song goes Zippity-Doo-Dah, zippity-ay, my oh my, what a wonderful day, plenty of sunshine heading my way, zippity-doo-dah, zippity-ay. And here it goes, sing it along with me, A-E-O-I, yeah, that's the dative. Use these endings when you show, tell, or give. Is, boost, tells to or for, with indirect objects, special verbs, and more. All right, let's do that one more time. Once again, you've got, by the way, first declension, second declension, third declension, singular. There's the name of the case. Use these endings when you show, tell, or give. Because think about it, when you're showing, telling, or giving, you're usually giving something, i.e. direct object, to somebody else, i.e. indirect object. And then you've got your plurals, first declension, second declension, third declension, plural. Is, boost, tells to or for, because that's an easy way to translate it from Latin into English, with indirect objects, special verbs, and more. You might be thinking, what's a special verb? We'll talk about that in part 4 of the noun review. So here we go. Dative case. 1, 2, 3. A-E-O-I. Yeah, that's the dative. Use these endings when you show, tell, or give. Is, boost, tells to or for, with indirect objects, special verbs, and more. And we'll fill in the noun chart next time in part 4 for the dative case. Okay, take care.